Hello there, welcome to Prime Sports with me, Razak Musbao. Tonight, Champions League quarter-final action is also underway in Spain and in France. Paris Saint-Germain playing Aston Villa at the moment. Paris Saint-Germain leading by 2-1 in that encounter. Elsewhere in Spain, Barcelona are leading Borussia Dortmund by 3-0 and pretty much on course to make it to the semi-final of the competition ahead of the second leg of the respective games, which are expected to happen come next week. Away from that, President of the Ghana Olympic Committee, Ben Nunamenta, has called for the depoliticization of sports, emphasizing that the threats it poses to the development of the sector. Speaking to my colleague Nathan Alato on his tenure as President of the Ghana Olympic Committee, he revealed that his administration struggled under the previous Akufo-Addo-led government because of his affiliation with the opposition NDC at the time. According to him, this affected his efforts and initiatives, ultimately hampering his contribution to the growth of the sector.
I won't deny that I'm NDC, and there's nothing wrong being a member of one political party or the other. We're in a multi-democracy, okay? But what people should look out for is the work I do. Do I work, as an NDC or as an NPP person when I'm delivering my sports? You will not even know where I belong to, because I will work very well with any sports minister. Look, some of the ministers that I fought most were ministers from my own party, who are my friends, Elvis and Erica, because at that time I was pushing for funding for the least financed sports. It's very difficult when we want to do sports and look at it with a political glasses, a partisan lens. It is very dangerous, because as a nation, the only thing that unites us now is sports, especially our black stars. And then also, if you look at international sports structures, they try to take away government's influence or government involvement in the sports structures. Because what could happen, or what will happen if you too much politically involved or politically biased in sports? If there's a change in government, it means that the sports structures have to change. And that kind of pushes our sports back. It doesn't give us the kind of consistency that the IOC wants our sports to have. That is why in most instances, the IOC would say, we don't want government involvement in sports. We want to have an independent body like the Ghana Olympic Committee or the national federations. The GFA has to be independent of government, so that we don't lose that momentum of development in our sports. Yes, at any given time, the sports minister has to push the agenda of the government, especially the agenda for sports. But every sports minister's agenda for sports ties in very well with the GOC's agenda to develop sports for the youth. So whichever way you look at it, whichever political party have their minister there, unless, of course, you're not interested in developing sports. But if you're interested in developing sports, you have a good partner or an equal partner in the Ghana Olympic Committee. But you would find certain individuals in sports who doesn't understand the way international sports works. And they may think that sports has to be political. No, I don't agree with them, okay? I am very, very much part of the NDC structure. In my constituency, I happen to be the chairman of the Elders, or Council of Elders. But it only stops in my house. When I wear the cap of the GOC president, I'm not political. I want to do, because you see, that is what the IOC mandates us to do. Sports should not be political. Anybody who believes in the charter of the IOC will caution any government who wants to make sports political. It would not be good for the long-term development of our sports, especially if it has to do with the Ghana Olympic Committee or the Olympic Committee or the national federations. Let the stakeholders run these things. and I'm sure they know what is good for the federations that they belong to, So it wasn't easy, sometimes in the days of the past administration. I know you go to the ministry and, everybody says, oh, NDC, boy, NDC, that kind of thing. Even when I work on the LOC for the development, I was actually once called into a meeting and I was given a strong warning that, look, if the AU takes the games away from Ghana, they were going to report me to the then president, Nanado, that it's because I was talking to Anoka, and I wanted to sabotage the games. But why would I do that? Nats, when you are in the Olympic movement and then you host a game in your country.
That's Ben Nunu Mensah. We'll bring you more excerpts from that interview on in our subsequent bulletins. But let's turn attention now to Arsenal's Thomas Partey, or Ghana's Thomas Partey, who has been in blistering form for Arsenal this season and was instrumental in the team's 3-0 victory against Real Madrid yesterday night. And following that masterclass performance in the midfield, Ghanaians have fans of Arsenal have been clamoring for the club to extend the player's contract. Now, the 31-year-old's contract is expected to end by the end of the season, with no decision made yet as to whether the club will extend his contract. But fans are demanding the club activate the clause to extend his contract because of the impact he's had at the London club since joining them in 2020 from Atletico Madrid. Well, thankfully, we are joined by Rahman Osman, a colleague who is based in UK, and has been monitoring Thomas Partey very closely, especially since he moved from Atletico Madrid to Arsenal. He's been monitoring him, and he joins me to speak a little more about Thomas Partey's career at Arsenal and how much of an instrumental player he's been for the London club. Rahman, thank you very much for making time tonight on Prime Sports. I mean, let's start from yesterday. I mean, you watched the game closely. What kind of performance did Thomas Partey put up, which has got fans all over the world talking about him?
Ms. Bao, it's a pleasure to join you this evening. And I mean, this kind of performances where people don't forget. So in football, you play almost every 3-4 days. So there are games where they are piling up. Then there's a game where you produce and you come into yourself that it stays in the mind of people for a very long time. That's that kind of performance he had yesterday. And there are things Thomas does. And the beauty of the game he produced yesterday is like, he didn't do anything spectacular, but he did everything spectacular, if I can say it that way. So it's not like he went past 4 or 5 people, shot from 50 yards and scored the goal. He just kept taking the ball, recycling the ball, winning the ball back, using the ball effectively. These things are things that other midfielders struggle to do, but he does them so easily. And that's what really has excited a lot of Arsenal fans. And for me, I've known Thomas so long when he played at Atletico Madrid. And the lone sixth position, there are few people in the world, maybe Rodri, surprisingly, who he played with at Atletico Madrid was quite good because he understands space and understands how to play in games like this. Remarkable. And as a Ghanaian in the UK and in the media, it's kind of really, you get pride from the way he performs because it's one of those games where everybody's watching, if that makes sense. It's Real Madrid in town. And if you follow English football, there's one club that gets them tipping their heart. It's Los Blancos.
Amazing. I mean, you followed him, not just, taking into consideration yesterday's game, but since he joined Arsenal in 2020 till now, of course, he's had to deal with some injuries here and there. But talk to me about the kind of impact he has had on the club in these last 5 years or so that he's been in UK.
I mean, to say that he's overexceeded will be underestimation. On the pitch, there's a reason why whenever Thomas is fit, he plays. Mikel Arteta himself was a midfielder, so understands what that role requires, and Thomas gives him that. He's like maybe what you call, like in Ghana we say, he's a maestro, like the grand piper. These are Arsenal team is set up in a way where they are difficult to play against, but also have the ability to head teams. And Thomas does something Mourinho doesn't do, Declan Rice doesn't do, and Odegaard doesn't do. And that is to link the defense to the final attacking phase. Nobody in that Arsenal team does that. And he's getting to a level, you know, it's like every other job, like in your job, in our job in journalism. You hit a patch where your colleagues admire the work you do. Now, Thomas has hit a patch in football where his teammates are admiring the way he actually plays every single game. Go through the social media of some of the Arsenal boys, Julian Timber, Declan Rice, Martin Odegaard. All of them are highlighting the importance of Thomas Partey. So he might not be in the front pages of newspapers and all that, but his impact and his other colleagues are seeing the impact he's making. That can only be down to excellence. So to answer your question on the impact he's had, he's literally one of the founding blocks of what Mikel Arteta has done. Like, he's a player that was signed by Mikel, and there have been players that Mikel has given contracts. And to borrow his own words, he says when he gave Aubameyang a contract, Uba stabbed him in the back, Thomas has actually stood up for him, even in difficult times. And whenever Thomas plays, the likelihood, I don't know what the numbers are, but when he plays, Arsenal are more likely to win.
I mean, fascinating. But let's talk about his contract situation now. What is it? Because what we're hearing is that the club is unlikely to extend his contract. You're looking at how improved he's become of a player, the kind of impact is happening on the club. And, you know, and to think that the club is not considering extending his contract, is this something you are also picking up? And what could be the reason behind, you know, this posture of the club?
So there are a lot of things that come into contract. The first question is, do you know if Thomas wants to stay? Because if you look at Thomas's age at the moment, the wage that he's on now, most of these clubs, especially the best clubs in the world, to look at the age of the player and look at how many years they can still have him with value. Admittedly, Thomas is in the best shape at the moment. You mentioned in the beginning of our discussion that he's had injury issues. So for about 2 of the 5 years that he's been there, they've been up and downs with injuries. And then now that he's fit, his form is an absolute hitter. The things Arsenal have to look at is that how much more can they get out of him value-wise? 2, he's on almost like 300,000. If you're going to give somebody a new contract, you need to add on to what they are earning. And at his age, do you add that? Because nobody's going to take a pay cut. Unless you're telling me that Thomas is willing to take a pay cut to stay in Arsenal. Then that raises another question. Can he get better somewhere? Other midfielders have moved away from England and going to make bottomless pit of money in other parts of the world that they're in. I think that it's in his own interest that a decision is not even made at the moment. Let's see if Arsenal can go on and win the Champions League. Then the cards will be on his chest, because there will be other clubs that will be looking at him and saying, we could do with his experience, we could do with his technique, we could do with his ability. And then that gives him options to also go to Arsenal and say, listen, if you want to renew me, maybe you need to add on how much I earn, because after all, it's all work.
Amazing. But let's talk about the likely situation that he does not get a contract extension. Where will he end up? You know, Saudi Arabia always comes to the fore when we talk about players moving, where players will end up. Of course, we understand there's some interest from Juventus also, and a few other players. Where do you think he's likely to end up in the event he doesn't get a contract extension at Arsenal?
Hey, it's tough. One thing is certain, there will be a line of top teams looking at him. You know, what he does is so simple, but it's rare to find somebody who does it that way. If you want to know the importance of players like this, just cast your eye aside to Manchester, from London to Manchester. When City lost Rodri, everybody thought that, oh, it was just a little like hitch. Their whole season has collapsed on that. If Thomas leaves Arsenal today, I tell you, or like, they will lose a massive part of what they are. So for him, he just needs to maintain this form, whether Saudi Arabia, whether in the MLS, whether in mainland Europe or even in the Premier League, Thomas will not be short of suitors. I don't know where he will go. There'll be a lot of decisions. Now he has a family. Before, it was just about him and moving. He could pick his bag and say, okay, I'm going here. He's got a young family, so he needs to think about the stability of his family, where they want to live, and all these things play into a part. But he can still play at the highest level. So it's tough for me to say, okay, move to Saudi or stay in England and all that. I just can say that if he continues to play like this, he can play anywhere, including even back in Spain, because I've heard that Barcelona could do with somebody of his skill set.
I mean, fascinating there. But just finally, I want us to wrap on the chances of him and Arsenal winning the Champions League, because following their impressive performance against Real Madrid yesterday, you know, that conversation is out there now that just maybe as this could be the season Arsenal will pull a surprise and clinch the title. And he will be adding to not too much of a long list of Ghanaians who have won the Champions League. And Rahman, just stay on there with me as I share this with our viewers, that the list of Ghanaians, about 5 of them who've managed to clinch the Champions League title. And just maybe, Thomas Partey will end up joining that list. So Abedi Ayew Pele is one of those, you know, Ghanaians who have won the title. Of course, he won it with Marseille in 1992, 1993. In fact, he assisted in that game, you know, a goal, the only goal in the final against AC Milan, assisted in the 43rd minute. And, you know, he was even crowned man of the match in that game. So he's one of the Ghanaians who have won the Champions League title, Abedi Ayew Pele. Now, another is Ibrahim Tanko. Ibrahim Tanko, the current head coach of Medeama Sporting Club. He's also won the Champions League. He won it with Borussia Dortmund, you know, in 1996, 1997. You know, and, you know, in their history, but the only time they won was when the Ghanaian fought, of course, was with the team. And, of course, they won that one after defeating Juventus 3-1 in the final. So Ibrahim Tanko is another Ghanaian who has won the Champions League title. And, of course, here is Sami Osei Kufuor with Bayern Munich. And they won it in 2000, 2001. It was a big victory for them on penalties against Valencia, and they clinched the title. So Sami Kufuor is also another one who has won the title, Ghanaian who has won the Champions League title. Then you have Sule Muntari in 2009, 2010, also clinched it with Inter Milan. Jose Mourinho was the coach at the time, and Muntari was indeed instrumental in Inter Milan's, you know, treble-winning campaign. Although, you know, played just 10 minutes in the final, as they, you know, of course, Inter Milan went on to beat Bayern Munich by 2 goals to 0, but he was instrumental in that Inter Milan side. And finally, the Ghanaian only, and you know, the 5th Ghanaian to have won the title is Michael Essien in 2011, 2012. He didn't feature in the final, but, you know, he played quite a part in that campaign also for Chelsea. So 5 Ghanaians so far have won the Champions League title. Will Thomas Partey be the 6th Ghanaian player to win the title? Rahman, how do you fancy the chances of Arsenal in this season's Champions League?
If I knew if Arsenal could win it, I probably know how to win the lottery and possibly make $1 million. You see, I get that a lot of people are really blown away by the performance Arsenal put out at the Emirates yesterday. It's such a really natural feeling because Madrid is Madrid. But the Bernabeu, man, have you been at the Bernabeu before? That cathedral is a different cathedral, and a lot of people don't write off Madrid. That is all I can say. Arsenal could really go out there and swallow Madrid. I get that. But in recent time, we have seen that even with 5 minutes to go, Madrid have that in them to pull out something magical. But again, it's the Champions League. Inter Milan are still alive in here, honestly, and I think they're a very underrated side. Italian teams, when they get to the last stages of the Champions League, are quite really deadly. Barcelona blow hot and cold in the league, but you need to pay attention to them in Europe. They are really, really, really good. And then PSG, I think the winner between PSG and Aston Villa could also pose a big threat. I would love Thomas to win it. I think the list of Ghanaian players that have won the Champions League is quite disappointing. Our history of football, our pedigree of football, we should have about 10 Ghanaian players, maybe 15 to have ever won the Champions. 5 is not enough, so it would be nice to have Thomas win it. But it's a long way to go, I'm afraid, honestly. And I think that there will be surprises. I really do.
Well, Rahman, thank you very much. We really appreciate the time. Thank you for making time. That's Rahman Osman, is based in UK, and he follows Chelsea Football Club closely, and also a lot of the Ghanaian players in the English Premier League. And he joined us for some quick conversation on Thomas Partey's career at Arsenal and the whole, clamor for Arsenal by fans of Arsenal for his contract to be extended there. But let's turn attention to the Ghana Premier League now, because in Saint-Germain was touted as one of the model football clubs in the country following their promotion to the top flight in 2022. The club since became a force to reckon with and even went on to win the 2024 MTN FA Cup, and they ended up representing Ghana in the CAF Confederations Cup. The club's rise was, however, cut short following the tragic act of hooliganism, which resulted in the demise of Kotoko fan and Napoli. Now, amid fears about retaliation and concerns about the players' safety, the club has now withdrawn from the Ghana Premier League and consequently ceased to exist. My colleague Daniel Cranton shares more about the unfortunate end of the Nsawthre-based club in this special feature.
Months ago, he was on the brink of his big break. Captain of Ghana's under-17 national team and one of the most sought-after talents in the country, Benjamin Chevagnor's ability caught the eye of quite a number of clubs, both home and abroad. He joined Ghana Premier League side in Swatraman after positive talks with their manager and former Black Stars forward Yao Preko. The season started well for the youngster, making himself a regular starter for the side until that fateful incident on the 2nd of February 2025. What was supposed to be a routine Ghana Premier League game between Nsawthre and Asante Kotoko escalated quickly with clashes on the pitch in Nsawthre between the two teams before Asante Kotoko fan Nana Pole was murdered outside the stadium a few minutes after full time after a scuffle broke out between the two sets of fans. Arrests were made and the league halted for weeks, with the Ghana Football Association instituting new security protocols to prevent future incidents. However, due to issues relating to the safety of their players and officials, Nsawthre decided to withdraw from the Ghana Premier League. That decision by the club isn't as straightforward as it seems, as it now leaves the players and their staff in a state of uncertainty. With the transfer and player registration window shut until the end of the season, players of Nsawthre are now set to be idle for the next 4 months. Chevagnon says he and his teammates are worried.
Well, some of us are worried. Yeah, we've been talking a lot. Some of us are worried, but for me, for now I'm in the house, in the house, but no one is going to tell you how he's feeling. As a young footballer, sometimes you have to let it go of the past.
He reveals the players have now set their personal training regimen to stay active until the end of the season, when they will be free to make moves elsewhere.
There's a saying that good preparation is savage. And as a young footballer, you have to always be prepared. Well, I do train at a big site with some young footballers, and also I train with some second division team at where I do stay. For me, I don't even want to stay in Ghana again, because I've made a name for myself in this country. So the next thing is to go outside and prove to the world.
But how will this period of inactivity affect players who seek moves elsewhere?
For the local clubs, I don't see it difficult for signing any of these boys, because they've been with them, they have been playing with them, they know their capabilities, and now the player is available on a free transfer. So it's a plus for the local teams in Ghana. I would say it's a plus for them.
Players like Chevagnon, who have been eyeing deals abroad, may have to wait, as this situation may serve as a disadvantage to their ambitions. Transferring
of players depends on the profile of the player, the number of matches that the player has played. So if a player is being an idol for a maximum of 3 to 4 months, the player doesn't look much attractive anymore. For instance, for European clubs, they will say no to any of these players, no to them, because they don't have much time. They've been idle for 4 months, which will make them very difficult for them to be fit at the European level.
His club's withdrawal from the league may have stalled his development and caused some uncertainty, but Chevagnon is choosing to remain positive and is not going to allow his smile to fade.
Well, wishing Benjamin Chevignon the very best. And so on that note, that we draw the curtains in tonight's edition of Prime Sports. We have more stories for you on myjoyonline.com. In the Champions League, PSG just defeated Aston Villa 3-1. Barcelona also concluded their game, defeating Borussia Dortmund by 4-0. Well, the second leg of the respective games will return next week. Thank you for making time.